Happy weekend, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all joining us here today on a Saturday and not a Thursday, and to be once again having our virtual lobster boil. We're going to have one real life and in person in August. If you're going to be in the Napa Valley, you can join us in person then if you're traveling. But until then, we're going to learn a lot about fantastic lobsters, where they come from, how they're harvested sustainably from the ocean, and most important of all, how to cook them with Chef Tod, and how to pair the wines with them from our fantastic winemakers, Michael Scholes and Brooke Shank, joining us today, and David Thomas joining us from Little Cranberry Island. Super excited to have him with us. But before we get started, let's jump over to Chef Tod in the kitchen, because I think we're going to need to start that water boiling. Chef?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. What we're going to do is a boiling method. We did this also last year. It's a very common way and easy way to prepare the lobster. So what you want to do is go ahead and get your water on. Depending on how many lobsters you are actually doing, you might need anywhere from 1.5 gallons per lobster. So imagine a big pot that's going to be able to hold at least a couple lobsters in there. And what you want to do is season that up. Make sure that you have maybe about 1 ounce of salt in there per gallon of water. So it's pretty well salty. It's going to have some good flavor that's going to cook into it. It'll help to set the actual the proteins themselves as well. So if you put that in and get that all going, you can use plain simple water if you want, but you could also do what we call make a classic court bouillon, meaning like a quick broth. And the court bouillon has some white wine in it, usually has some acid that helps to set the protein, but it also has some aromatics in there. And so you might have seen in the invite or the shopping list that you might add some onions, some leeks, maybe some white wine. You could also add some fennel or some bay leaf, thyme, herbs and things like that. So it's going to actually flavor that cooking liquid that you want to boil it in. So if you have that, chop up all those vegetables, make sure they're clean, let that cook in the water for maybe about 15 minutes, and then stir those vegetables. Remember that flavorful liquid, because that's what you're going to put back into your pot and make sure that it's at a good boil and ready to go for your lobsters.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. I know Brooke Shank's cooking along with you. I see several other people in the kitchen getting ready to go with their water and moving it right along. So thank you for that. And I see that we've got a wonderful view of Bahaba there. It looks like we're looking back towards from Bar Harbor Inn towards Little Cranberry. Look at that beautiful view there in Maine. Another beautiful there as well. One of my favorite places to go, as well as Napa Valley. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I think you're all going to really enjoy your lobsters today. So super excited to have them. Let's jump over and see what Michael Scholes, our VP of Viticulture and Winemaking, has in his glass to have with his lobsters today. And we'd love to hear on the chat what you have in your glass, and if there's any special vintages or celebrations going on. So Michael, tell us what you're drinking there.
Hi there, Emma. How are you? Hey, listen, I've got our Vertu here today. I've got the 2019 Vertu. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you were a little choppy there for a second, but
okay. So I've got 2019 Vertu in my glass. That's what I'm going to enjoy with our lobster. It's a pretty fun wine. I like the 19 vintage and how it's drinking quite at the minute. In fact, so is the Dolomite Sauvignon Blanc's drinking well for it as well. So there's a couple of options, but this is the one I've chosen today. So
well, I'm going to do the 2020 Napa Valley Estate Sauvignon Blanc just to get warmed up. But, you know, when the lobsters are ready, I might be moving on to the Vertu as well. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the blend and why you like it so much with your lobsters?
So this wine here is a blend of Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc. And so they're quite interesting when you blend them together. And, you know, it's been done for centuries, this blend. The Bordelais have been doing this white wine for who knows how long. And these two varietals come together exceptionally well. So Semillon sort of gives an elegant sort of lemongrass, lemon butter sort of approach. The Sauvignon Blanc element to it gives it sort of more of the grapefruit and the green lime. But this Vertu's got a little bit of oak influence in it, where it's got some barrel fermentation, enough to be present, but still maintains the elegance of the wine. So it's a foam wine. It's got good bright acidity, yet good texture and good volume. So it'll pair well with the lobster. Even if you're using some butter and what have you, it'll still handle it. And it's a cool option.
Yeah, I think it's going to be delicious. And I know one of the other favorites is to actually have a little of the aloe. I've seen you pull out some red wine on occasion with the lobster, maybe a little towards the end of the evening. Are we going to see that today?
Listen, I could be guilty of that later in the day.
I know that those are a favorite pairing, shall we say, aloe and Vertu from you. Well, let's jump over to Brooke Shank. She's there in the kitchen getting her lobsters going. What are you pairing today, Brooke?
So I have Dollar Hide Sauvignon Blanc in my glass, 2019 actually. So I mean, Sauvignon Blanc is going to go amazing with lobster, and I have all my lemons cut up, so I'm ready to go here. And with the Dollar Hide Sauvignon Blanc, we do it's 100% Sauvignon Blanc, but it does have just about 16% of it was fermented in new French oak barrels. So there is a little bit of that barrel nuance on the aromatics and also on the palate. And there's also some volume with this wine because we do age it on its yeast lees. So that surly maturation for 5 months and stirring that lees up in the wine and doing some batonnage on it in those 5 months really brings a creamy and also some texture and volume to the wine as well. So that's what I have in my glass.
Well, that's also always one of my favorites. I love the Dollar Hide Sauvignon Blanc, and I think I'm going to be serving that with the salad that I'm going to make first, and also a little asparagus with some fresh orange segments off our tree. I think it'll be nice with that little bit of citrus there too, as we kind of move along with it. So looking forward to having that. So let's jump over to David Thomas. We're so grateful that David has joined us today from Little Cranberry Island. I hope everyone received their lobsters. I haven't seen anyone say they didn't arrive. So good to know everyone's got their lobsters. And David, the Cranberry Island Fisherman's Co-op has been around for quite a long time and established in 1978, and you're a part of that wonderful group. Can you tell us a little bit about what it takes to become a lobsterman and part of the co-op and how you operate?
I originally came to Islesford as a school teacher. And I taught kindergarten to 8th grade for 2 years, and then I went fishing in 1975. So I've been lobstering for the last 45 or 46 years. It's been, it takes sometimes a weak mind and a strong body, because you just have to keep going. Things don't always work the way you want them to work on the water. It helps to have people that know what they're doing when you first start. There's a real sense of let's help the young guy that doesn't know what he's doing, make sure he understands it and he's doing everything right. We bought the co-op for a number of reasons. One was we wanted more control over our destiny. We wanted to make more money is what it really boils down to. We've had a tremendous number of changes in my time. From wood traps to everybody fishes wire traps now. A 35-foot boat was big 45 years ago. Now the boats are 50, 55 feet. Everything is bigger. It's like the rest of America. Everything is bigger, faster. Not necessarily better in my mind, but.
Well, that water out there is certainly cold, even in the peak of the summertime. And I know you guys are fishing quite quite regularly throughout the year when you're allowed to. And this year, I understand that kind of along the East Coast, I don't know if it made it all the way up to where you are, where a lot of the traps had to be pulled in early because of the whales migrating much closer to shore this year. Was that an issue for everyone?
That was an issue in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. Cape Cod Bay is closed down for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, they have to adapt to it. They have to live with it. It's not easy. I literally, in the 45 years that I've been lobstering, up to 20 miles offshore sometimes, I've never seen a northern right whale. They're there. They have to be there because they're everywhere. But I haven't seen one. So
And
with that,
yeah, well, it certainly is absolutely beautiful where you are, Little Cranberry. There's a fantastic shot coming from Ryan posting up there. What a pretty spot, and you can see Great Cranberry, Little Cranberry. And if you do make your way to northern Maine, going to Mount Desert Isle for fantastic hiking and visiting the islands via the ferry, it's just a wonderful trip, and of course, the very, very best lobster. So, David, why don't you tell us a little bit about the lobsters that we have today? I think you pulled them out of the water yesterday and shipped them off to us all over the country, which is kind of fun.
I shipped lobsters myself for 25 years. And then the co-op took it over as I get old enough and the kids get out of college. We pride ourselves on handling our lobsters properly and maintaining their strength and shipping them in a timely manner and making sure that people get a good solid product. We caught, I think, 1.3 million pounds last year in our co-op. And we basically, we sell to, well, the whole state caught 96 million pounds. So we're a small cog in a big wheel, but we take pride in what we do.
And how many boats do you have that harvested that much lobster in the co-op?
We have 28 now. We're a co-op. You can join the co-op if you fit all the criteria. So we have 28 now. A couple of years ago, we had 26. It goes up and down, but it's averaged 25 or more for the entire 40 years we've had
the co-op. Awesome. That's quite a great team. And you also catch crab and any other bycatch. I know that with the crab, you sell the crab there at Little Cranberry. Do you ship that out as well? Oh, did we lose you, David?
We did momentarily.
Oh, I know. Being in a far part of the world, we often lose people here at St. Superi, and I know you're way out there as well on the island. So we're happy to have you joining us. So.
I'm not a technological wizard, so it may be my fault.
We're just going to blame it on the internet, you know. So tell us a little bit about, the actual lobstering with the traps. They're pretty darn heavy. You guys are staying quite fit, working super hard, and kind of how a lobster team looks when you're out on the water, typical crew structure.
I actually took someone from New York who was worked in theater, and they watched three of us fishing one day, and he said, "Your choreography is as good as anybody on Broadway, because when we haul traps, I gaff the buoy, I haul the trap up to the deck, swing it on the deck, and then the crew takes care of it. And it's just a matter of everybody's got a job to do, and everybody knows what the job to do is. Right now, I'm hauling my traps every 4 or 5 days. I've got 500 out. I'll have 800 out later. That 800 is the most we can fish. We use a multiple amount of bait, different kinds of bait, depending on the year. And there are 3,500 lobstermen on the coast of Maine, and there's probably 3,500 different ways to make a living. What works for me might not work for somebody in southern Maine.
Well, tell us a little bit of how you ensure that you're maintaining the lobster population and farming in a sustainable manner or fishing in a sustainable manner.
Well, for beginners, we've always had for the last 90 years or so a minimum length of 3.25 inches along the back. That's from the eye socket to the back of the shell. So anything smaller than that goes back to grow up. Anything over 5 inches from the eye socket to the back of the shell also goes back. The reason for that is we feel there are more prolific breeders. That's our brood stock. And additionally, any female between that 3.25 inches and 5 inches that we catch that has eggs on her underside, we make a little notch in one of the flippers on the tail and we throw it back. And as long as it stays in Maine state waters, it will die of old age because we can't sell it. It's protected for eternity. We also, in our traps, we have vents that let the little ones out. There's no sense to have a trap full of little lobsters. They come in, they get a snack, and they leave. That's the basic conservation laws that we have.
Well, that's actually quite clever, too, to have them able to get out and you don't get anything else coming in through that. Is it a one-way exit for the smaller lobster? Or
well, I suppose our traps are set up so that the bait is in one end and the lobsters go in after the bait, and then they can either go out the way they came in, or they can. The easy way is to go into the back of the trap. And that's where we usually catch them.
okay.
If you put a video camera in a lobster trap and you watch them coming and going, we're not the most efficient fishery in the world, but that's probably a good thing because nobody wants to catch the last lobster.
Exactly.
We want to keep this going.
And
it's one of the.
Sorry, go ahead, David.
It's one of the keynotes, one of the most important parts of our industry is that we make sure that there are lobsters for the next generation and the generation after us.
Yeah, it's super important. And, we want to make sure that all of us doing what we're doing are leaving the planet in a better place so that we can continue for generations to come to source our food the same, to grow our grapes the same, and to be able to have this bounty that we exists today for future generations. It's so important. It's such an important part of sustainable aquaculture, sustainable farming, and just being thoughtful for the planet. Tell us your favorite way to have lobster.
I prefer a lobster roll. That's my favorite way to eat lobster.
Oh, me too.
All picked. It's it's relaxed. It's you can. That's by far my favorite way.
Absolutely. And any special tips on your lobster roll? I think some folks may have ordered a few extra lobsters to make lobster rolls later.
I want just enough mayonnaise to hold it together, and a little bit of pepper and a little bit of onion. And a true Maine lobster roll is served in a hot dog bun.
Yes. I've been making some homemade baguettes that I think are rivaling the hot dog bun a little bit, but that's been kind of my goal for my lobster roll. And I like a splash of lemon on there too. Sure. And maybe a drizzle of a little extra butter, because I've been listening to Chef Tod for a while and he keeps telling me everything is better with butter. Last year, he taught me how to do a butter bath for my lobster, but I don't do that every time that I'm having them. Well, David, thank you so much for shipping us all our lobsters, and I know everyone got your information to purchase more lobsters from you in the future, and enjoying them. And we are streaming this on all our social channels. So we hope that those of you on social channels, make sure you check in with Little Cranberry Island Fisherman's Co-op and order some more lobsters up because they're delicious and sustainable. So thanks so much, David, for joining us. Let's jump over to Chef Tod. He may have more questions for you on these gorgeous lobsters. Mine arrived just about an hour ago, so they're making lots of squeaky noises. So Chef, how's it going there in the kitchen?
It's going well. My lobsters arrived a couple hours ago as well, so there was a lot of excitement in the kitchen. You can see a beautiful example right here. So this one is pretty close to about a pound and a half. Looks really lively, really healthy. The way that they pack them is really interesting. They do a fantastic job there. Little Cranberry is really good at their shipping that they do. This one happens to be a female, I can tell, because these two upper top little feathers on top are soft, as opposed to the males, which they are hard or firm, more like the shell. But you can tell she's pretty lively and all ready to go. Now, typically there's all different degrees of doneness that you want your lobster to be cooked at. If you're going to eat it straight out of the shell, just crack it and sit at the table and eat it, then you may want to take that lobster and go all the way up to about 10 to 12 minutes. That's going to cook it at as high as that pot will boil without boiling all over. By the way, it is kind of a messy process, so be prepared to clean up the kitchen a lot. And if you're inside, it may smell up just for a little while, but that's okay. It smells like lobster. And then if you also have a pot outside, that's also a great tip. If it's nice outside, you can put a big burner out there or cook it outside. But as hot a temperature on the boil as much as possible without it boiling all over. And as I said, for this size, typically, if you're going to eat it straight away, about 10 to 12 minutes. One thing that we do in restaurants a lot of times is we would want the meat and take the tail and crack out the claws and do all that ahead of time so that you can gently rewarm it back up or work it into a dish. And so in that case, we're cooking them a little bit underdone. It'll still set the outside of the actual muscle, but on the inside, it's still going to be like rare to medium rare. And that would mean that you pull it out anywhere from 8 minutes, 9 minutes. So you're purposely undercooking it. And then even in those cases, we would take them out and shock them into an ice bath, water and ice. So it stops the cooking process. It also helps the meat to kind of pull away from the inside of the shell. So it's easier to cook ahead, to peel, to crack them, and to get the meat out for afterwards. So there's a couple different ways that you can do it. Yeah. So there's a couple of ways will help you. But if most likely what you're going to do is cook it all the way through, get it to that nice point where you can crack it out and just go ahead and dip it right at the table right away. So in that case, I would say anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes. If you have a larger one, obviously you want to increase that by a couple minutes. In fact, a Little Cranberry, they always include a little cooking guide. It's really nice. They include that in with their shipping. So you have the increments there for maybe 2 minutes more for a quarter pound bigger lobster, or another 4 minutes for a half pound bigger lobster. So as they go, you just increase the time. But I did mention that there was the court bouillon, the classic method of kind of chopping up some vegetables and having those all ready to go. That was actually a part of flavoring my boiling water. And so what I like to do is take that vegetable mixture, and from raw, it doesn't look like much. It's a lot of onion, it's leeks, it's some carrots. I got some bay leaves and thyme. A lot of different vegetables that are going to add flavor into there. I even cut a lemon in half. So I put that in with my water with the salt. Again, a pretty salty amount of water or salt in there to make it taste pretty flavorful. But I simmer it basically for 15 minutes, and then I scoop all this out. And so this is basically what it looks like, because it's given up all of its flavor into that cooking court bouillon. So now that you have that, along with some of the wine, of course, the wine's going to help as far as flavor and everything. So now that you have that in there, your liquid is up to a full boil. I went ahead while we were talking earlier and kind of listening to David. I went ahead and dropped my lobster in, knowing that I need to have it kind of sitting out and kind of cooling just a little bit so that I can show you the cracking it and getting it out of the shell. So I'm probably about maybe 8 minutes into it. I'm going to go just a couple more minutes, but I wanted to talk to you about a couple other elements that I have going on here. Number one, this is beautiful lobsters ready to go, nice and lively. You want to keep it nice and cold. You don't want to store these in water. You don't want to cover it with water thinking that it's going to keep living and breathing on tap water. You also don't want to put salt water in. If anything, you just want to make sure that you keep them covered in damp, maybe keep them in the packaging that they came in. If you have damp newspaper that's super wet, you can put that over the top, or a wet towel. Nice and cold in the refrigerator until you're ready to cook them off. That's the best thing you can do. Otherwise, a couple other fun elements that always go really well with this is to have some, maybe just a little bit of butter. You might see just a touch here.
Oh, a little bit.
And then a little bit of lemon. I look for the smallest one that was growing on our tree. And then what I'm going to do is show you a couple different extra sauces that can go along with this.
Number one was the butter bath that Emma had mentioned. And what it is a really simple emulsification of just some water and some unsalted butter, so you can control the seasoning afterwards. And what that means is you're just going to slowly warm up this water and then emulsify with a little whisk. You're going to stir until you end up with this loose kind of a water bath with butter and reinforced into it. And it kind of makes this lightly creamy kind of a base. You can use this for re-warming vegetables. You can warm up your lobster if you undercooked it, maybe 8 minutes, 9 minutes. You can gently warm it up in there. It gives the lobster a really nice kind of a warm bath in that butter. That goes really well. The other one is a classic beurre blanc. And so I'm going to make that also for you. That one has some white wine and some vinegar and some shallots in it. And it's a classic reduction where you cook it down, concentrate it. I like to add just a touch of cream in there, especially since I know it can go with our virtue, having that malolactic and the barrel fermentation and all that richness. So since it's going to pair up with that, I put just a touch of that. And then I also add in, guess what, a little more butter. So I'm going to monte that into that white wine base, and that'll be a finished sauce as opposed to a bath that you want to dip it into. So I'll show you those two methods and two techniques. All right, so I'm just about ready to pull my lobster out. So let me go ahead and show you what I have here.
Well,
So I'm going to take my bowl. Let's see if I can get over here and kind of just show you what's going on. There we go. So you can see lobsters boiling away. Color obviously changes right away from the shell as soon as you go in. The color of the liquid is darker because of the court bouillon, all the vegetables that gave up their flavor into that. So now what I'm going to do, I happen to have a big scoop that helps to lift it out. You can also use, if you like, a pair of tongs. You want to be careful so it doesn't slip and splash, and you get accidentally might get splashed or burned. Okay. And so from there, I'm going to go ahead and put it right into the bowl.
beautiful.
Now, I'll just kind of let that set and kind of cool down. It's pretty hot right now as far as me trying to handle it. So what I'm going to do is kind of let that set while I work on the other two elements to go along with it. But it looks beautiful. They do, as a safety precaution, they put their Little Cranberry logo, really super thick rubber bands so you don't get pinched. All right, so as that kind of just cools, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the number one, the butter bath, beurre fondu, and then right after that, the beurre blanc. So by turning your heat on your burner to about low so that the water comes up to a simmer. As soon as you see a little simmer here, you're going to go ahead and start to emulsify in. So if you have a whisk, and the butter should actually be cold. You want it to be cold so that it can slowly melt. And as it slowly melts from cold into that warm, it's going to create an emulsion. That's the important part there. Now you can use this beurre fondu as a little dish for everybody at your table. You could put it into a bowl where they can dip in and warm up their lobster from there. Or you could also just drizzle it all over as you're warming it up and serve it from there. Now the beurre blanc, the classic French butter sauce, French white wine butter sauce. I do have a recipe where I did a red wine version of that called beurre rouge, and you can use that for meats. You can use it for rich fish like salmon. That's on the website. If you take a look at that recipe, you'll find that there's also the option of just substituting out the red wine and the red wine vinegar and using white wine and white wine vinegar. And essentially you're making beurre blanc. All right, so now as the water comes up to a little simmer there, as you can see that, I'm gonna go ahead and slowly just start to emulsify and add in a cube of butter at a time. And you don't have to necessarily worry because there's so much liquid in here. You don't have to worry about it separating and ending up with just drawn butter. Drawn butter is fine. It does kind of separate out the milk solids and the water that's already naturally in butter. But by doing it in this method, and again, I'm going to turn it down just a little bit and keeping that water in there kind of as the carrier, it's going to create that looseness so that I can just baste the lobster after it's cracked out of the shell.
Oh, look at all that wonderful butter. Do you have any favorite butters that that we can find in the grocery stores, Todd?
Well, you know, they do make some really European style. They're kind of forced with a little extra of the butter fat. They have more of the milk solids in there, a less proportion of water. There's some that are kind of European style. So if any of those that you look at, if you find them and they say European style butter, that's a good chance that they're reinforced with extra richness. So you're going to get more flavor, more bang for your buck out of that.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. All
I
right.
need
So
to-
you can see this is kind of frothing and foaming just a bit. And you can make as much of this as you need to. The important thing afterwards is that you kind of hold it at a warm temperature. Now, not over a burner. You don't want it to be too hot. You don't want to have a candle underneath it like a little tea candle light. That will cause it to possibly separate. But you do want to keep avoid it from setting up and being too cold. So you wouldn't want to refrigerate it or have it somewhere where it's way too cold. All right, so that's pretty good for the beurre fondue. And this is a common thing where a lot of times, in fact, with our great sustainable seafood virtual demonstrations that we're doing, I'm actually going to poach a fish in here, a white, beautiful piece of striped bass. I'll take a nice fillet, and I'm actually going to cook it in this because it's at such a nice low temperature. And why not cook it or poach it in butter? Can't go
Oh,
wrong with that.
oh, I love that idea already.
All right, so here we have, and whether or not you season it or not is entirely up to you. You can. I'm going to put maybe just a pinch of sea salt in here. All right, and so it's got some flavor, some seasoning, but yet it's still loose enough, but you can tell that there's a nice rich butter flavor. I can smell it, it's wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and set that one aside. And let's keep letting our lobster kind of cool down a bit, and we'll jump to our beurre blanc. So now in this case, this one has, as you can see, some chopped shallots, very classic in a lot of French sauce making. It has a little bit of white wine, so I'm using some of our Sauvignon Blanc as well as a little bit of vinegar, some white wine vinegar. I can also finish this with some lemon if I wanted to turn it into a lemon beurre blanc. I could also take some of this beautiful, gorgeous zest on the outside and shave it right into it, microplane it right in. So kind of that same kind of emulsification, but this will be much less liquid and much more concentrated. So what it's going to do is create much more of a creamy sauce that you can either drizzle onto it or you can just dip into it. I wouldn't say that you would necessarily want to warm up your lobster or treat it like a butter bath. This would be much more of your sauce. And this goes fantastic with a lot of other shellfish and seafood. Doesn't necessarily just need to be for lobster, but because I'm having this with the Virtu today, then it's a good match. All right, so as you can see, again, low temperature, it's kind of reduction here going on where it's concentrating the acid, it's cooking away the raw alcohol. And as soon as it comes down to just about what we call a dry or sec, then I'm going to go ahead and add just a pinch of cream, just a little bit. It helps stabilize it. It lightens the color a bit, but it also helps with that nice mouthfeel. So in goes just a little bit of cream, heavy cream.
Is that about 2 tablespoons or?
Maybe about a tablespoon.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm going to make a small amount here just for the amount of lobster that I have. But again, if you want to double it or increase it, you can add even more. So same idea here. This is going to cook up and thicken just a bit, but I also want it to be fairly loose. So let me turn the temperature down here. And as I turn this temperature down, I'm going to go ahead again and start to whisk in butter, kind of a cube at a time. It'll melt and it will slowly emulsify in here. And just make sure that your pan is not rapidly boiling, and that way it will not cause everything to kind of separate where the oil and the water kind of break away.
It looks nice and thick. It looks delicious.
It will get even more creamy because you're getting a little bit of emulsification where the fat and the liquid, they kind of suspend all together. You know, it's that same kind of emulsification process that you think of for vinaigrettes, for mayonnaise and things like that. All right, so as this kind of warms through, just keep stirring. And at the end, you can add some fresh lemon juice to it. It's a wonderful base that you can add a lot of different flavorings to. Some fresh herbs at the very end would be nice. I happen to have some chopped chives I can finish into this to go well with the lobsters.
It looks fantastic,
Now, if
Todd.
you should happen to see any of the looks like melted butter or clarified butter starting to break away, then turn your heat down and add maybe just a little shot of water. What you want to do is kind of cool it down so it doesn't cause it to break the emulsification. But what you also want to do is add a little liquid in there, which will extend that thickness and that the life of it. If it is a little bit too tight, that means it's close to separating or curdling or breaking. Low temperature, pat after pat. And at some point here, when you get maybe to about 6 tablespoons worth of butter, you can give it a taste to see. What you want to have is a kind of a acidic background from the wine. You want it to be kind of a nice balance between the richness, but also have some tartness at the end there. And then from there, I've got a small mesh strainer that I'm going to go into a bowl. And again, same idea. I want to keep this emulsified and warm, so I don't want to refrigerate it. And I also don't want it to sit over too hot of a heat source where it's going to cause it to melt away and break. It's amazing how that big bowl of butter all of a sudden just kind of disappeared before our eyes.
And that's just for one lobster?
This can be for two to 4 lobsters easily. The butter
Okay.
sauce as well as the beurre fondue.
Just
Right.
checking.
Yeah.
I don't think I ran far enough this morning.
Okay, a pinch of salt in here, and I'll taste it in just a little bit, but I want to put some salt in. Of course, if you like pepper, you can add either maybe a tiny bit of cayenne, or you could also add some white pepper. Let me go ahead and give this just a little taste. Very nice. Good guess on the butter. All right, so we're off. You can see the creaminess on this. Let me show you the difference. Here's our beurre fondue, the loose water bath, where it kind of drizzles,
Yeah.
as compared to the beurre blanc, where it's much more pour and rich and creamy looking.
Wow.
So what I'll do is go ahead and strain this out so that you can eliminate the shallots.
Right. And get that perfect texture that you always get. That's your secret. The secret
Make sure you strain
sieve.
it out. Yes. There we go. All right. Now we've got beurre blanc, beurre fondue. And now what we need to do is get our lobster cracking. So let me just make a little space here. Don't forget, set your timer so that your lobster doesn't overcook. A couple things that you're going to need. A really good idea is to have definitely some gloves. You can see I've been wearing gloves the whole time. I actually double gloved, so I put 2 on because sometimes the little spikes on the shell, some of the shards of the shell can be a little bit rough. So you want to make sure that you don't get scratched or poke yourself or anything. Right, so this one is now cool to the touch, but still warm. And I have no issue with just serving it as it is because it's nice and warm already. And remember, I also have that beurre fondue that I can rewarm it back up in. So a couple things, even the shell crackers like these are really handy as far as breaking all this down. If you need a little knife for getting in there to the shell, you can do that. You could also use some kitchen shears. If you have some heavy duty kitchen shears, you can kind of cut through the shells. But let me just show you how we're going to break this down. Number one, I took the actual claws off. You have the pincher. I think this is the right hand. So this is the big crusher. And then you have the actual pincher over here. All right, both of these, there's knuckle meat inside here. There's the big claw. There's a small piece of meat that runs inside of each one of these. And then as far as the tail, we've got all the meat right in through here. So typically what I do is I'll just twist gently.
Hope you're cutting out a little bit there, Todd. We couldn't quite hear you.
We're gonna see a little bit come from this. Okay. What you want to do is
Todd,
save all the
we're
shells
losing
because
your
you can't actually-
microphone a little. If we can recheck your microphone that you're connected because you're cutting in and out a little. And this is a very important part.
I think I got it.
There we go.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yes, much
I had to
better.
reset a little bit. I think I'm rolling out just a touch. And let me move my microphone up a little bit. There we go. We should be good. Okay. So now we have the lobster tail, the prime part. Here's what I'm going to do. Just very gently, the middle tail petal, I'm actually going to kind of twist it and pull that off because there's meat that's in there. The next step will be almost like a little bit of a gentle push, kind of like putting some pressure on the side without crushing too hard until you hear a little crack. It's almost like a CPR. And what that does is shatter the shell so that you can get your fingers in underneath it and kind of just pry it open from there, right? And this is where the gloves come in handy because you are kind of getting to the sharper parts of the shell. So any of the juices and any of the shell parts I'm going to hang on to because we can definitely use that later on if you were to make a lobster bisque, any kind of a soup, seafood soup that you want to use, you can do that. Another fun thing is to actually save the legs. So you think, okay, they're very small and thin, but there's actually some meat there. And I'll show you a little trick that I have for getting the meat out of there. I'm sure all the lobstermen know about that. Sometimes that's a prime part that people will enjoy kind of gnawing on or chewing on.
They're like little lobster straws.
Shells, yeah. So as far as these go here, you can kind of just pull them right off or twist them. And they'll pop out. Same thing here. So I have a big kitchen knife that's fairly heavy, and you can use this essentially to kind of crack through parts of the shell if you need to. So this is one that is not my favorite sharp knife. This is one that I don't mind if it gets a little dinged up because this whole process is pretty brutal since you're going through some hard shells. So it's a heavy duty kitchen knife that I'm using here. Now, as I have the claw, if you can see that, I'm going to go ahead and pop that one bottom pincher part and do a gentle twist, and we'll see if it stays in or not, all depending. And if not, then the meat is still inside there, so you can get in and pull that out. And there's a little bit from right there. You see that? Every bit counts when you're talking about lobster here. So I'm going to save that as well. Now, when we get to this part here, a couple things. You can use a crusher like this, and you can get down to the thickest part and just do a little gentle crack until you hear it kind of crush. You don't want to go too hard because you don't want to damage the tail meat or the claw meat that's inside. But that'll give you a little area that you can open up the widest end down here, and you should be able to pop that claw out by pushing from where you just removed the upper claw part.
Perfect. I love the claws. It's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, they are definitely more on the meaty side, right? They have a lot more action from being a motion muscle all the time. And so by gently pushing there, you can get them out from the back. And you want to kind of keep them intact. So that way, if you want to use a nice presentation, a nice piece, you can see there's a little bit of the coagulated protein on there. You can wipe that off. Doesn't hurt to eat it. That's all good. So you have actually the top part of that claw. So you have a tail, you have one of the claws, you're saving the knuckles. The same idea here, you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, a little twist and crack here. If you're a little squeamish, don't worry. All right, there's the other claw piece that came from the big crusher. On this one, it's a little, let me just show you this, and I don't necessarily say recommend it, but it is one way that in a lot of restaurants, we will just actually take a little sharp crack and hit it maybe about an inch from the end on all sides. And it will actually, if you're lucky, you'll get a good crack in the line there where you can kind of just pop the shell open. So without going all the way through, and a little twist like so. And so it's almost like popping the end of the bottle. You want to be careful so you don't chop all the way through it, and definitely stay away from your hands. And you can see that nice piece came out as well. So that's the large crusher piece.
Perfect.
Okay. And then let's see, we've got our tail. We've got all the different claw pieces here, or the knuckle pieces, which are absolutely delicious. You can get in here with scissors and cut through it. You can actually get in and pry. I'm using like a little oyster knife here. You can kind of just get in and pop it right out. See, there's a nice knuckle piece as well. So you want to get all of those bits out, all of those pieces out. If you have kitchen shears, you can cut right through that shell and kind of pop it open. But, you know, a lot of times it's just sheer determination that you want to get in there and get every single bit of that delicious meat that you can. So just a little crack on that thicker knuckle, the one that was right below the claw. Pull away those shells. Again, go into your bowl to save it all. So even though a lot of the flavor went into the boiling liquid, that court bouillon, you can still get some flavor out of those shells. A lot of things, times I would take those lobster shells, put them onto a pan. There's a nice sized knuckle, beautiful piece right there. And I would basically put that into the oven and kind of bake them until they're dry and you get a little more flavor out of them, developed out of them. And then go ahead and put them into a stock, add some water, add some of your vegetables, just like you did for the court bouillon. And then you can actually cook that down, maybe even put a little tomato paste in there. And that'll give you a nice kind of a lobster stock base that you can use. Again, a nice little knuckle.
So Todd, would we bake it at like 350 for 10, 20 minutes or?
Probably a little bit higher, maybe go like 400 degrees and go for about 10 minutes. And that'll get some flavor out of there. So let me just wipe this down and I'll show you. You know, there's little knuckle pieces and small bits that you get from the shell and everything. And a nice way to get those to use them, whether they go into maybe your ravioli filling, you put them into some risotto. Maybe you can work that in with your lobster roll meat and everything like that. Here's a really nice trick that you can take these legs and you can actually roll the meat out. So what I did was I snipped off the ends so it's nice and clean. So you have kind of like an exit spot right here. And I typically finish off a bottle of wine while I'm cooking lobster. So what I'm going to do is start at the claw
Good job.
and just kind of roll. And so you see, as you roll, you get some of the meat that kind of just extrudes right out. Right.
Beautiful.
As I was mentioning, every little bit helps. So, you know, recycling, being sustainable with the bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Can't think of a better way to use an empty bottle.
Well, that's always my rolling pin too. So another great use for an empty bottle of wine before you recycle it.
Yeah, rolling pin works really well. The only thing is, you know, you're going shellfish on there with your butter, flour and pastry and things like that. So
That might be okay.
Yeah.
David said it's a good toothpaste technique.
Yes. So save your empty bottles. And when your toothpaste is down to the end, just put that there. Maybe you set your toothpaste down or your toothbrush there and you can just squeeze it right onto it.
There you
It's
go.
a great idea.
Another good bottle use.
Yeah. So you get the idea here. Lots of juice in here. And it is part of the lobster meat and you're paying for it by the pound. So let's get all that meat out as we can. And again, as I was mentioning, you know, chop it up and put it into maybe a little ravioli mixture, put it in with your lobster rolls. So essentially, you end up with all these parts of the lobster.
And Todd, you cooked this for 8 minutes, is that correct?
This one was actually went a little bit more like 9 minutes. So it is done just a little bit further. And then from here, your tail, you can just slice it. Go into like nice little medallions.
Mm.
Now, every once in a while, you might find some of the roe on the females that's right in through here. It's dark, and if it happens to cook, it turns this beautiful kind of a green color. And there's all basically the parts of it, along with all the knuckle meat and the claw meat and things like that. Now, to warm this back up, we can go back to our beurre fondu. And it's still at a nice lukewarm kind of a temperature. So I can go ahead and turn the heat on. And I can gently warm up all these wonderful pieces. And then afterwards, we can plate it up on whatever kind of plate you want. Add your lemon wedges to it. Here is my beurre blanc. So again, you can kind of see the difference between the two. As I mentioned, I do have some chives. So I'm going to go ahead and put some chives in.
Oh, nice. Little burst of freshness. That'll be nice with the Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes, very. Anytime you got nice fresh green herbs in there. So now we have like a chive beurre blanc all ready to go. As this beurre fondu warms up, I can see that it's starting to simmer. This is the point where I'm going to go ahead and just gently, without causing it to boil, I'm going to go ahead and warm up these tail pieces right in here. So they're going to finish cooking. Kind of baste them, let them gently re-warm back up. They still have some heat because I didn't actually shock them into an ice bath or water afterwards. So they still have a little bit of that nice residual heat. So this is just like washing them over. Oh, it smells so good.
Wow. I thought for a moment I could smell it from here. Okay.
That could be. So it really doesn't take that much, right? The main thing is you don't want it to be incredibly boiling hot. You don't want that beautiful lobster meat, which is nice and tender, to toughen up. So that's really all you have to do there.
Wow. It looks fantastic.
Nice little plate up. You can decorate it however you want. You can just get in there. If you have a table with some paper towel down, just go ahead and put it all into a bowl or something and just have at it. You got some great sourdough bread, which is always a favorite of us here in San Francisco. If you happen to have made some wonderful sourdough, you can do that as well. Soak up some of the juices, along with any of your other vegetables. You know, there's great asparagus right now that's happening. You can have some wonderful vegetables. You could actually warm up your vegetables if you have some blanched off asparagus. Go ahead and put it in the beurre fondue just to warm it up as well.
Oh.
So a little extra touch on there. If you happen to have wanted to dress this or sauce it with the beurre blanc, you could do that as well.
Because it needs more butter?
As a little extra touch, it actually could use maybe just a touch of some roe or caviar. In this case, it happens to be some whitefish roe from Tsar Nikolai, our friends out by Sacramento, with their sustainable, this is saffron infused whitefish roe. So beautiful color that's going to go on there as well. Why not?
Oh, wow. How fantastic.
Here's our beurre blanc. I'm just going to kind of nappe that right over like a little blanket of love.
Oh my goodness. Food equals love, and sustainable seafood gets a little extra burst of love, particularly with that sustainable caviar.
Beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous.
It still works with our virtue, with our wines. You know, we've got that wonderful crisp acid. They do such a great job of making it, maintaining the freshness. So this is a decadent touch that you don't necessarily have to do, but of course, since I love to support our friends there and we're talking sustainable seafood, I thought this would be a great thing to do. If you happen to have maybe some lemon, you can put lemon with it, as well as I was mentioning, some really crusty, nice sourdough bread to go with as well. Hopefully you enjoy that all. Give that a try.
That is just spectacular, Todd. It's a good thing my husband didn't watch this, because he's going to be a little disappointed that his is not going to look like that. Wow. Just spectacular. Oh my
amazing. It does take some work and it does take some planning, but you know, if you plan ahead, you can come up with a really nice looking lobster, put it all back together, have a display like this. Maybe even if you wanted to serve it chilled, right? If this one is cooked all the way through up to 10 to 12 minutes, you want to serve it chilled, you could put it into a lobster roll. You could also do a nice lobster salad or something like that as well.
Absolutely spectacular. You've once again outdone yourself. I'd love to see how everyone else is doing. I think Eileen, you're doing pretty well there in the kitchen. Can you show off what you've got going there for us?
How's it looking?
Is it looking good?
How's it coming?
Oh, you're cooking along. You've got plenty of butter. That's what we like to see. Lots of butter.
We went all in on the butter. We followed Chef Tod. We got 15 pounds of butter. So.
Oh, well done.
That's all.
Yeah, we're not messing around. We saw him cooking. We didn't know if we had enough butter. So.
Yeah, it's always a question with Todd. Has he put enough butter in? And yeah. I think he just throws a little extra in anytime he's concerned there might be a problem. There's a little extra butter. Well, looking good there. Thanks for cooking along. Looks like a lot of folks got some veggies at Farmer's Market this morning. Maybe we'll see some popovers and some fresh baguette. How is Brooke doing? Brooke, how are you doing there with your lobsters? Have you got them in yet?
I didn't put them in yet. I have it boiling, and I have the butter ready. So as soon as we get off, I'm going to put them in and wait 10 to 12 minutes.
And you're not going to peel them for everybody and do the butter bath? No, you're gonna make your household work for it. Yep, I think exactly. That's a good idea. Every time you peel a lobster or shuck a lobster, how do we say it? you definitely, I think you burn all the calories that are in the lobster. So it's really good to let your guests, get their own lobster out of the shell, because think of the calories they're burning. It makes it a net neutral caloric dinner, just like we're carbon neutral in the vineyard, we're going calorie neutral on the lobster, or something like that. Anyway, well, it's great to see all of you, and thanks so much for joining in. Do check out all of Chef Tod's recipes, and we'll see you back for the great sustainable seafood tour here coming up. Again, the first 2 Thursdays of next month. Do continue to support all our wonderful aqua farmers, fishermen, and those doing the right thing out in the ocean to bring beautiful things to your table in a sustainable fashion. And thank you, David, so much for everything from you and everyone at Little Cranberry Island at the Lobsterman Co-op. We really appreciate that. And to all of you, we look forward to seeing you soon at the winery. And be well, be kind, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Happy lobster.
See all your favorite wine club members. There's Casey and Chelsea and Marilyn, Eric. Nice to see you guys.
Happy lobster.
Happy lobster. Happy Saturday. What you got going there, David? Are you done? Let's see. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Delicious. Beautiful. Color looks fine.